Latest on Chiwenga, nurses fracas as doctors and lawyers for human rights breathe fire. The Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights as well as the Zimbabwe Association of Doctors for Human Rights, ZADHR, have called on the government to respect the country's constitution and to revoke Vice President General Constantino Chiwenga's decision to fire nurses for engaging in industrial action. We publish their statement below in full. ZADHR and ZADHR statement on dismissal of nurses. Zimbabwe Association of Doctors for Human Rights, ZADHR, and Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, ZADHR, are appalled by the government's arbitrary decision to dismiss all striking nurses from their positions at state-run hospitals. Government on Tuesday, April 17, 2018, the eve of Zimbabwe's independence, fired nurses employed at state-run hospitals, who had been on a work boycott protesting against poor salaries and unfavorable working conditions. Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, who heads the social services cluster, announced that government would replace the dismissed nurses with some retired and unemployed qualified nurses and accused the striking health practitioners of being influenced by political motives in staging their protest. ZADHR and ZADHR condemned this dangerous and irresponsible response by the government as illogical and that it will have serious consequences on the welfare of people, who have been condemned to be attended to by some inexperienced and/or retired nurses. The summary dismissal of the nurses is in contravention of constitutionally guaranteed rights, particularly Section 65 of the Constitution, which guarantees express labor rights to every person except for members of the security services. ZADHR and ZADHR would like to draw the government's attention to Section 65(3) and 4 of the Constitution, which states that every employee has the right to participate in collective job action, including the right to strike, sit in, withdraw their labor and to take other similar concerted action, and every employee is entitled to just, equitable and satisfactory conditions of work. Government needs to appreciate that this fundamental provision, which came into force in 2013, means that for the first time in the history of labor relations in Zimbabwe, the right to fair labor standards and practices has become enshrined in the Declaration of Rights as a basic human right. Further, the summary dismissal by the Vice President contravenes Section 68 of the Constitution that guarantees the right of every person to administrative conduct that is lawful, prompt, efficient, reasonable, proportionate, impartial and both substantively and procedurally fair. Government has been reluctant in responding to the legitimate concerns raised by nurses and has over the years not fully addressed the serious consequences brought about by the unprecedented exodus of health practitioners in search of greener pastures due to the same concerns which are being raised by nurses now. ZADHR and ZADHR reminds government that it has a responsibility to ensure that citizens' rights to health care is not compromised and should immediately implement measures to resolve the situation at state-run hospitals. As organizations which strive to foster a culture of human rights, ZADHR and ZADHR stand in solidarity with the dismissed workers and hold government accountable for the blatant breach of the health workers' fundamental rights and the Constitution, as well as any consequences that will arise from staff shortages at health institutions. Therefore, ZADHR and ZADHR call upon government to revoke the dismissal of the nurses and reinstate them to their positions and urgently respond to the concerns raised by the health practitioners, finalize the review of the Health Services Act and make the Health Services Board more accountable, efficient and independent, develop minimum-level benchmarks for conditions of service and provision of adequate tools of trade, fulfill its social and economic rights obligations as set out in national and international law in order to guarantee the realization of the right to health care and the right to human dignity for all citizens, increase funding allocation to the health sector and strive to allocate 15% to health as stipulated in the Abuja Declaration in order to enhance the quality of life of citizens. Kina Sispenzi Kina. Shinga Mushandi Shinga. Long live Zimbabwean workers.
We'll be right back.